this section, we're going to be going over skills that take a little bit more practice, but are still manageable and able to be learned with a little bit of time. Although there's about as many things in this section as the beginner section, these aspects of the game are much more likely to propel you through the ranks than even the advanced section will. These are truly the most important and fundamental aspects of Rocket League that need to be mastered. Let's get started. Like most skills in Rocket League, wall hits will take a little bit of time to get good at. This is a skill that becomes much easier with good camera settings. You may have noticed that my free play sessions look a little bit different than yours, in that I am able to send the ball toward me with the press of a button on the D-pad. This is due to a program that I've installed called MOSEF. This mod for Rocket League allows me to do these things and much more. I highly suggest downloading MOSEF in order to assist in your training sessions. You can also find training packs either on the web or with the Feature and Browse tab in Custom Training and practice wall hits this way. To successfully perform wall hits, it's important to keep your eye on the ball as it approaches you. This skill will take time, but getting good at it is vitally important. You can also practice wall aerials by going into pro training and jumping off the wall, evening yourself out with air roll, and flying toward the stationary balls. Jumping off the wall to meet the ball in the air can be useful to beat your opponent and give yourself an upper hand. Dribbling is a very important skill that is primarily used in 1v1s, but can also be utilized in 2v2s and 3v3s as well. The best way to practice dribbling is to go into free play and focus on keeping your car directly under the ball. To get the ball on top of your car, you should practice lightly touching it and hitting it into the air, and then driving underneath it. The best way to keep the ball in your car is to focus on the circle that is on the ground. Keeping your car in the middle of this circle will allow you to balance the ball and dribble on top of the car. As you get better dribbling, you'll start to not need the boost to stay underneath the ball, and it's actually possible to dribble around without any boost whatsoever. You can also turn with the ball on top of your car. Being able to do this will enable you to do another intermediate skill called flicking the ball. Being able to flick the ball is a good way to get past your opponent and potentially score a goal. There are many different types of flicks, but for this segment we're going to focus on the 45, 90, and 180 degree flicks respectively. The difference between these flicks is how much you need to move your car in respect to the way you were driving. The 45 degree flick takes less time than the 90, and the 90 degree flick takes less time than the 180. With each type of flick, you'll have to move your stick in a different direction in order to flip your car to get more power on the ball. Generally, the more power you get, the better. You can also flick the ball in a more controlled fashion to get over an opponent and maintain control of the ball in order to further your attack. As you get more comfortable with these flicks, you'll want to start using air roll to make more contact between the car and the ball, and this will give you more power and more consistency with your flicks. Fast aerials combine two aspects that we talked about in the beginner training. To do a fast aerial, you must be good at getting off the ground for a regular aerial. If the ball is too high in the air, and you're going to take longer than the 1.5 seconds that you have to use your jump or to flip your car, then we need to perform a fast aerial. Doing a fast aerial sounds simple, but executing in the heat of the moment can trip up even the most seasoned of players. We're going to start by jumping, tilting our car back, and boosting all at the same time. As soon as we let go of the left stick that we used to tilt our car back, you then need to press the jump button again to boost you into the air. Not only will this allow you to get to the ball faster, but it can also save you boost along the way. The key point in doing fast aerials is the timing of letting go of the stick and performing your second jump. Too early, and you'll do a backflip. Too late, and you'll run out of time to use it. This skill will also take time, but eventually you'll get to a point where you're hardly backflipping at all. Demos are a hot topic in Rocket League. Some people think they don't take any skill, Some think they take more skill than most of the rest of the game, and some people just go for demos throughout the entire match, regardless if it helps them or not. A demo can be achieved by going at the maximum speed, known as supersonic, and hitting an opponent while going at this speed. You know you're going supersonic if you have a trail coming from the wheels of your car. Demos take an opponent off the field for 3 seconds and can really tilt the numbers in your favor. They can also have a lasting effect by throwing off the opposing team's rotations for anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds throughout a match. Demos can also be used to completely clear the net and give your team a free goal to shoot on. Going for demos can sometimes be detrimental, but they are most effective when your team has a numbers advantage, such as a 2v1. Even the threat of a demo is enough to give your teammate an easy path to scoring. "50-50s" are named this because they generally consist of 2 players going at the ball at the same time, but unlike their name, they are not necessarily a coin flip. The most common type of 50-50 in the game takes place in the form of kickoffs, but 50-50s can happen anywhere on the field at any given time. Depending how and where you want the ball to go in a 50-50, you need to position your car accordingly. Generally speaking, it's best to make contact on the ball in the center and have the bulk of your car directly behind the contact point. This will ensure that you put as much driving power into the 50-50 and are more likely to win. As we talked about with kickoffs in the beginner section, you can also angle your car to squeeze the ball in a direction that you're wanting. Angling your car to protect your goal or to have the ball spill out in an opponent's net are 2 of the many ways 50-50s can be used to your advantage. One of the more important parts of team play in Rocket League involves positioning. Positioning involves taking control of as much space on the field as possible without being so far from your teammates that you are no longer able to help them if they need it. Putting your team in a spot where you are no longer able to assist in the play at hand is called being out of position. Similarly, if you push too hard for an attack on your opponent's side of the field and find yourself out of the play for an extended period of time, this is called overextending. While there are times when doing this is okay, a good rule of thumb is to avoid them as much as possible. Basic positioning works as follows. You will have one person that is close to the ball and thus able to make a play on it the fastest. This person is the first man in the rotation. They are who should be attacking the ball and trying to either control it or pass it to a teammate. The next player forward is considered the second man and is responsible for taking over the play when the first man has either lost control of the ball or has successfully passed it. The last player is known as the third man and is responsible for taking over if the opponents take the ball from the first man or if the ball goes anywhere near or behind the second man. After the first man has lost control of the ball, he will rotate back behind the third man. The second man is now the first, the third man is now the second, and the first man is now the third man. It's important to realize while rotating, the first man should always rotate to the back post side of their net and out of the play. It's also important to note that depending on the momentum of the play is going, the first man doesn't always need to fully rotate back, as this will lose the momentum for their team, and instead they should slightly sit up higher on the field and be ready to become the second man as quickly as possible to repeat the cycle. Reading the field should dictate where you place yourself on the field. There are many different types of reading the field. You can use this skill to decide if you should keep pressing with an attack, go back to defend, open up for a pass, or if you have time to control the ball and develop a play. To read the field effectively, it's important to look at who is closest to the ball, the angle at which they are approaching, and where others are at on the field. This skill is one that is mostly developed over time played, but paying attention to these things will help to develop the skill faster. Being able to predict not only who is hitting the ball, but also where it is going to go, can be a huge advantage in every game of Rocket League. A bonus tip to reading the field effectively is to realize that, for the most part, both teams always want to get the ball in the back of the opposing net. This will help dictate their movement and should help you to recognize where you need to be either on defense or offense to best help your team. Recoveries impact many different aspects of the game, including how your teammates are reading the field and how quickly rotations can be completed. The main key to recoveries is using the free air roll button to adjust your car and land cleanly on whatever surface you're heading toward. Generally speaking, pointing your car so it's facing toward the ground when you land is the best type of recovery due to its speed. But you can also use recoveries offensively to quickly follow up your own touch and surprise your opponent who would have otherwise had a free hit on the ball. You can practice the skill by air rolling while aerialing and focus on landing flush with the wall. Being able to land cleanly in many different situations will speed up your overall gameplay and give your team a much stronger foundation. Redirects are a simple but effective way to score goals or to outplay your opponents. A redirect is a type of hit that changes the course of the ball. Redirects usually happen when a pass is successfully pulled off and the person receiving the pass attempts to score by aerialing and angling the point of impact of their car to redirect the ball onto target. Redirects can also be used to throw off your opponent that would have otherwise had a free touch and instead keeps the attack going for your team. And that just about does it. We are all done with the intermediate section of our Rocket League crash course.
Okay, so that one went a little bit more in depth about some of the more complicated parts of the game. Did anyone have any questions about any of that? I didn't really give you guys mechanics on that one. The next advanced tutorial is really mechanical, but oh, I did it again. I turned it. Yeah, I kind of went into the positioning. I know the positioning was a really big topic the last time I did this. Like the terminology at the first, second, and third man and all that. So if we have any questions about that, I can go further in detail, pull up one of my replays or something and talk about it.
I would greatly like that. I think between that and reading the field would be one of my questions of how do you make that decision rapidly and kind of what principles guide that decision?
Okay, yeah, for sure. Those are, I would say, knowing your spot and rotation and being able to, for the most part, accurately predict what's going to happen like before a time is definitely those take a long time to develop. Those skills they're soft skills, but they take a lot of effort to develop. So let's go into this one. Should be a good game. I don't really know. Oh, I need to get a 3v3. Yeah, so those definitely take a long time to get good at, and it's really hard to do it in Rocket League because it just moves so quickly. But for the most part, it's about like for a long time I had to like consciously think about it, right? Like you have to be thinking, especially when you're like a lower ranked player, like you have to consciously like think like where are people at, where are my teammates at? Usually you start with your teammates, like knowing where they're at because it's just two people, like max, and then you move on to knowing where your opponents are, and then you try to put them all together. And that's kind of the hardest part and what takes the longest amount of time. So like, for instance, this is literally a second into the game, right? But I know that if I hit this ball mid already, that my teammate Fakey over there is going to go for it. So even though this isn't the greatest hit by me, I still start leaving pretty much immediately to at least wait and see what the outcome of that challenge is, right? So it's it's something you have to develop, and at the beginning it is very conscious, and it's you definitely have to think about it. Um, but after a while, you start getting to the point where it should be pretty much like not even a thought anymore. Kind of like how like a batter in baseball thinks about, at the beginning you really have to like focus and like try to hit the ball, and then eventually you're able to get to the point where you can like start hitting the ball to a specific area, right? So like here, I know, okay, so I see four of the other five people on the field, um, and obviously they don't want the ball to go into their net, so they're not gonna, they're gonna hit it away. Um, so especially since I see my two teammates, I'm gonna go and be third man, right? Like I'm gonna go leave, and I'm gonna go be that defensive wall that they need me to be, just in case something goes wrong. Um, and then you can see this from like an up down point of view. That's a college player that I play with a lot, but um, you can see this from like an up down point of view where this rotation is really coming in. Um, and I've recently started talking about like the idea of like this triangle of influence kind of thing, where so if you're all in one line, you kind of you're not controlling a whole lot of area, but this area like in between you all, and this is like a way higher level thinking than like most players. Um, like this area that is between you is kind of what you control, and then like obviously a little bit of sphere of influence around all of you. Um, but you want to try to keep that triangle as much as possible. So like here, as soon as I see, so Somber, like it doesn't really, I don't actually think this like in game because it's too slow. But when you're first starting out, you have time to think this. So thinking like, okay, you don't have to think about their name, but like, the opponent is hitting the ball, and like we talked about in the beginning tutorial, you need to hit the ball on the opposite side of where it's going to go. Like it sounds like no duh, that's how it works, it's how life works, how physics work, but that's kind of what goes into your brain, into your mind. So he's going to hit the ball into the wall. Well, the ball has to go somewhere whenever it hits the wall. It's not going to go through the wall. It's going to go out here somewhere, right? So I position myself as third man to be able to attack the ball when it gets over here. And that's exactly what happens. Terrible hit. That was awful. But I was still able to make contact on the ball, and like the better hit would have gone on the backboard or toward the net. This really could have been a shot at net, honestly. But that's kind of like the thought process that you go through while you're getting better. Is like, okay, ball hitting wall, I need to be where ball is going to be, and then make contact. Not great contact, but and yeah, so and then right now, like I mean, if we just go from a top-down point of view, we can kind of see how like I'm third man right now, Fakey's going to be first man, and John's going to be second man, right? Um, because I can't do anything in the play. I just did something. Fakey is facing it. He's facing the play, so he'll be able to act on it next, and then John will clean up whatever happens from that. And I kind of cut John because we're all learning. I'm like the highest rank in the game, and I'm still learning. So, um, yeah. So I just did something with the ball. Now John takes over, and then I leave, right? And then Fakey comes in, and he doesn't really do much, which this is another higher level thinking from him. So a part of reading the field is getting used to knowing, like, understanding, like, if you're going to be the first person to the ball or not, or if you're going to get beat, and that's a part of reading the field, and that just comes with time. Because obviously, the more you play, the more used to where the ball is and your abilities and all that. But here, he knows that he's going to get beat, right? Like, it's very obvious that guy is like infinitely closer to the ball than he is, right? Just very much, so much closer. So what he does is he just drives at the wall, and this isn't like the best fake challenge I've ever seen in my life, but it does make KX kind of panic a little bit. And then because Fakey didn't actually go for the ball, now he can rotate behind me, and we do like a very like minuscule like 2v2 kind of rotation where now that the ball is away from this dude, I can go, and then Fakey will be third man. So we're switching from first and third to like he was first and I was third to now he's third and I'm first, right? Like it's like a little miniature rotation inside the grand scheme of the rotation, right? Because John's way over here. So we have to do the defense right now. So we're going to rotate around each other until John gets back. But yeah, so just being able to kind of like figure out mainly like I pointed out in the video, like where my teammates are, where the opponents are, where like how much boost we have, like what position I'm in. And then I call this is another way that you can think about it, where if you've played other games that are very similar, like it's mainly like a card game terminology, but I call it value trading, which is, well, I'll let the clip play and then we'll talk about it. What you can and can't do to make your team more effective. If it would actually go to my camera point of view, that'd be good. Okay, so what happens here is we start off, that guy misses, but Tully was ready, right? Like Tully's on the backboard and he was going to be first man, and then Panda's going to be second man. But that doesn't end up happening. So they kind of double commit. But so I'm first man right now because I have the ball. And what's going on in my mind is, okay, that guy, this person, Shib, is like behind me, so he's not gonna do anything. I beat this guy for free, right? Like I just touched it and I beat him for free. So right now I'm doing what's called a value trade, which if it helps you conceptualize it better, then that's great. That's kind of the point of the method of the like the term really is that. So I'm first man, and Dad is their third man, right? So I have people behind me where he doesn't, right? So he doesn't have any teammates to like back him up. He doesn't have anything like no one's going to help him if this 50-50 doesn't work out in his favor. And that's kind of the whole idea of a value trade, is I'm taking myself, and yes, I may throw myself out of the play by doing this, but I'm also taking the more valuable person off of their side of the field. And this can happen even if it's not like first man versus third man. This can happen if you guys are playing a team and obviously one of their players is better than the other, they're better than the other ones, then you can, kind of push value trades onto that player, take their best player out, and really try to stop them, and then focus on other things later on down the line. So, yeah, this ends up working out because he has no one behind him, and I have two people behind me. So even though this 50 isn't the greatest, it ends up spilling out mid to where Tully can just clean it up for free.
Yeah, effectively the other two were not in position, so you force Dad out of position.
Yes, because it's about knowing where I'm at, right? It's about knowing that, okay, Shib's behind me. This guy just got beat for free. Now it's first man versus third man. And the ball just ends up, their entire half of the field, there's no one there, right? Like this is just textbook, put it away and move on to the next goal. And you can do that. You can do that in this instance. You can do that against like if there's a really high ranking player on the other team, but the other two aren't so good. There's a lot of instances where you can do that, and I call that value trading. But it's about knowing where you're at on the field and taking them out of the play as much as possible. So yeah, I mean it's just small stuff like that that you can do to really push the game into your favor. And then like we'll go to one of these. Like this last goal probably has a lot of rotational things, so I'll just watch over that because like, at this point, it's also so there's something to be said about knowing the game state as well, where um, people tend to play more passive whenever it's tied and late into the game or it's overtime, and people are usually more sloppy and not as cohesive when the game first starts. So there's something to be said about that. It's not like a crazy big deal. This guy's camera settings are terrible, um, but it happens. If I could get to the right, there we go. So actually we'll go up here. And then so this is something that we did in this rank because, but without communications because we're some of the higher ranked players in the game. But here, so Fakey understands that if he hits this ball, it's not going to go anywhere. And if he waits for the third man to come in, then we're all good. Then like I can do more on this ball than he can, right? Because he's driving this way and I'm driving toward net. So yeah, we'll watch it kind of from a bird's eye view, and then we can. I mean, you guys will see where the rotations come in. One of us should cheat here. Usually it would be John cheating because it's easier to lose the kickoff behind you. So it's a small thing. You won't score, but see here, like I could have waited for this touch, but I knew that Fakey. So the easiest time to know when like people's boost amounts is going to be at kickoff because you all start at the same amount and you can kind of keep track of where people go. So I knew that Fakey didn't have much boost, so I didn't want to wait for him to do something with it. I probably should have because it ended up being a good pass. But because of that, John ends up not going because he's third man. Right? Like as soon as he sees us double commit like this, he hightails it out of there. And he waits. He buys just enough time to where we are now basically the point of contact for third man is whenever the first man should happen. The point of contact for first man or third man should happen whenever the rotation, like this plane is being crossed of the players. Usually that happens a little bit farther back, but right now we have pressure. And understanding pressure momentum is a whole different story. But he's contacting the ball as soon as Fakey is already back because then you can, like Fakey can cover this area now and John can cover this area, right? And that kind of just happens instinctively over time. Usually, I mean, if you're building your team from the bottom up, you can like kind of designate an area. Usually, I like to say like this area between midfield and these boost pads is a good spot to like cross over like that because it's still pretty defensive, but you can also keep pressure. Here we do it a little early because John knows he can beat him, and that's again it comes with time knowing when you're going to beat someone and when you're not. And a lot of it is that, the ball is heading toward John and away from Khan. So John knows he's going to be able to get to the ball first, which is why Khan goes for a dunk and kind of lazily tosses himself at it. Oh, that's the goal, actually. Nice. That was a good little passing play. So as soon as we'll just go through it real quick. So the ball comes toward John. He hits it around them. You don't want to just hit it like blindly into them, right? If he gets dunked, this whole play doesn't happen. And then he leaves, right? And because he leaves immediately, that tells Fakey I can go, right? Because if he doesn't leave immediately, then maybe Fakey can't go anymore. Maybe they'll double commit, and that's not good. And then I'm in the third man position because I'm reading. So obviously we're going to be attacking the net because, like I said in the intermediate tutorial, the main goal of Rocket League is to score goals. So I'm here because Somber and Khan are both trying to hit the ball away, and they're both kind of like, this guy's super awkward. This is a really awkward aerial. And if he hits the ball, he is facing toward like this area, right? So if he hits the ball, it's going to come toward me. So that's why I'm lined up behind Fakey to kind of support this. And then John turns in because John will be the faster of the two of us to get there, right? Like he's already there. Even though he was rotating, he is now covering this mid because if something bad, catastrophic for the blue team happens in mid, then he's going to be the faster player, right? Because he's already upfield, which is fine. And if you recognize that, then you can be third man. And then he ends up that's a pretty good that's a pretty good touch from him because I was reading for him to hit it kind of toward the wall, which is why like I'm postured like this, like kind of facing the wall a little bit. And then he hits it upfield, which is a good touch. So I ended up having to get an awkward touch, and I try to give it to John. This was intentional to toss it down to him because I saw that he was in midfield and that there was likely not going to be a whole lot of people around us. Because I just saw Somber take the boost to my right, so I thought Somber was going to rotate into the corner, which he, in all reality, he probably should have because they ended up getting scored on. But so I wanted to touch it lightly to John. Ends up being a good pass, and then John hits Fakey. He splits the defense. And I mean, this is way closer than it should have been, but for this rank, this is an easy goal. Khan tries though. But did that kind of explain like third man and like reading the field a little bit? It definitely comes with time, but as long as you're able to communicate where you're at, which is the big benefit that a lot of your programs will have over like me playing ranked, because you'll be able to communicate and you'll be able to talk about what's going on. So that kind of answer your question?
It does, thank you. And I just want to touch on that communication question. I'm envisioning that it's the three of you sitting in Discord or talking via headsets, and that's how you're citing, oh, okay, I'm circling back, or oh, okay, I'm doing this, that, and the other. John support here. Is that what you mean in that regard? Because I imagine you're
Yeah.
not playing silently.
Yeah. You don't. I mean, there have been like professional teams that are just like don't talk and they just focus and they do their own thing. And because they're professionals and they have thousands and thousands of hours, it works out. Sometimes, not all the time. But yeah, like a lot of times, if you're rotating back, you'll want to like say like you'll say important stuff. You don't want to, and you got to go fast, right? Because Rocket League is such a fast-paced game. You don't have time for full sentences, and a lot of times it'll sound like caveman speak, where you're like I got or
Back,
pass
support.
up or whatever. Yeah. You want to be fast. You want to be quick. So like a lot of times the main things you'll talk about are like boost, your opponents. If you notice something, you'll talk about like your positioning, or like even if you're like first man and leading the charge. So there have been plenty of times where I'll have the ball on the wall like this, and instead of going for a solo play, I'll say like I'm hitting it backboard. And what that allows to happen is I no longer like I can rotate faster because I already know what I'm doing, right? Like I can just instantly get out of here. And if my teammates were mid and they saw which one's backboard? There it is. If they saw a backboard pass, they can now posture for that as well, right? So it does two things. It allows your teammates to know what's going on before your opponents, maybe, potentially, and then also allows for yourself to like the further ahead that you can see into the game, the better an advantage you're going to be, right? Like I can't tell you what's going to happen 30 seconds from now, but if I can tell you what's going to happen 3 seconds from now, then we're 3 seconds ahead of the opponents, right? Especially if you're the one with control of the ball and you're like, okay, I'm going to go for a solo play. So what that allows is your teammates to kind of, sit back a little bit, form that triangle of the area that you control, and then if something goes wrong, they can clean it up afterwards. And that's kind of the idea. You have to be fast, but you also need to be clear about like your intentions, right?
I imagine it's a lot like a quarterback and a receiver that after you've worked together for a long time, your team has an advantage where they just kind of know what each other are going to do to in a
Yeah,
situation.
it sounds this sounds kind of bad, but I have some real life friends that play Rocket League with me, and they're not my rank, right? So like when we play together, and we're not community ranked or anything, but when we play together, sometimes if I see them go up for an aerial that I think is a little out of their reach, I might know they're gonna miss, and the opponents don't know that, right? Like they're not gonna call out like, "Oh, I'm whiffing the ball," but I know it, right? So like there's definitely some chemistry stuff that you can work on. Um, and like if you guys have, I assume most of your programs will have some lower ranked players, but you may also have like one like just absolute stud, and if he's able to determine like what's going to happen before uh, your lower ranked players, maybe him being the leader of the team and calling things out the majority of the time, maybe that's what works out for you guys, right? Like it's really it comes up to team play dynamics, but you can definitely communicate um, about as effectively as you want, and then eventually over time you'll start to know each other's tendencies. Like, oh, this guy, this teammate isn't super great at backboard reads, so instead of on the backboard, I'll hit it infield, right? It's just small stuff like that that'll become like kind of nuanced to your game, but being able to dissect like who is and who is not good at specific things is going to let you definitely compete at a higher level for sure.
Or either your collegiate team, like how many other players do you play with? I guess my question is like you don't form like a this is my 3v3 team. It's me, John, and Scooter or whatever. I assume that you get to play with several other collegiate athletes and you just have to like adjust each time in terms of having a profile on each other player. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you do so like I mean I have like Nate is a CRL player. Um I mean just so like this guy he was on our team at Drury. I coach this guy. I mean I have like there's tons of people. This guy plays in CRL. This guy plays for Missouri S&T. There's just a ton of people that like yeah you get used to who you're playing with and for it's kind of like your real life friend groups, right? Like we all have friends that are a little closer than others, so we play more with them and we hang out with more with them and stuff like that. um, some days it's kind of like basketball, right? Where I'm sure there was a day or two when Michael Jordan didn't want to lead the scoring team and he was not feeling it. So instead of giving it to Michael Jordan, they gave it to Scottie Pippen. Like when you find the person on your team that has the hot hand for the day and they're hitting every shot and it's all upper 90 and they're taking on 2v3 or 3v1s and winning them. At that point, that's kind of, you have to kind of adjust a little bit because you found the person that is the gamer term is peaking, which means like they're at their peak performance. Um, but you found the player that's doing the best possible, and they're just absolutely destroying the entire lobby, and they're carrying the team. And at that point, that's kind of who you adapt to go and give the ball to, and who you're passing to. And whether it's a conscious thing or a subconscious thing, is up to you guys. Is it really up to your team and like how you guys are performing? But like when I go queue just a regular, 3v3 ranked match, I don't know, probably 80% of the people I play with in 3v3, unless I'm queuing with them or like I get to my rank where there's not a whole lot of us. But for the most part, you don't know who you're playing with and you don't know how well they're playing that day, which is really one of the more important parts. Or if you're going to play against a team that you think is pretty evenly matched with you, you want to be sure and know who's doing well on the day and like beforehand. You don't want to have to figure that out like mid-series, right? So getting some time and some reps together beforehand is going to be very helpful, even if it's just queuing up ranked or unranked or whatever. But yeah, like it definitely switches from day to day, and I mean I definitely have like my core friend group, which Cabot was invited me because we play a lot of twos together. I have a core friend group that I play with, but like any of these people on my friends list, well, if they're Rocket League players, I could play with and eventually adjust to, right? Like, but it does take some time. So getting in some like practice reps or a training session before the game, or I mean, there's not a team out there professionally that for any traditional sport that just walks into the field and starts running and destroys their opponent, right? Like you can't just do that. You can't just like show up to the soccer field and start doing bicycle kicks over the over the other player's heads. Not when you're evenly matched, at least for sure. And you can't really do that in Rocket League either. So, but yeah, there's definitely some adjustment period, and like that'll again, a lot of the weight is going to fall on whoever. If you have a player that is a league or two above the other players, a lot of that is going to fall on their shoulders, of them realizing the strengths and weaknesses of their teammates, of them being able to see ahead, and of them, sometimes they're going to have to carry and sometimes they're going to have to facilitate. And a lot of that will come with time, but it'll be a lot of work as well. So it won't happen overnight. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Does anyone else have any like team dynamics or anything, or any questions like about the two tutorials so far that have confused you? The next one's going to be very mechanic based, but you've seen me do some mechanics while I'm just sitting here. But those might confuse you as well, and I have some like terminologies and some ways to think about them that are a little different than most people. But if you have any questions about, even if we want to go back to like how do you do a half flip and stuff, or how do you wave dash, definitely after the advanced video, feel free to ask. And if you guys have heard about, I don't cover everything in these videos. There are some, more advanced mechanics that I don't cover. If you guys want more explanation on those, I can do those as well. Hopefully. I'm like one of the highest ranks in the game, but there are some mechanics that are even out of my league as far as consistency goes.